What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York again, and on the phone, we got John from Mantric. Thank you for your time today, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, and for the record, for all the listeners listening to this, they're doing mandatory construction on my building during this time, so forgive any possible background noise. But it's awesome to have you here. The newest album, False Negative, which just came out this past April. Do you just want to talk about like how the making of this record was and the recording and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, sure. I guess this record, we started off recording, I think it was 3 years ago or something. And before that, we had some, maybe a year or so that we rehearsed the material, and then we recorded the drums in a couple of days. I think it was 3 or 4 days at actually the studio of a guy called David, we used to play in a band with called Exto, and when we were done with the drums, we recorded more or less at our guitarist's place, Tor. He has like a cabin behind his house, so every once in a while we kept come together and record the rest of the guitars and bass and vocals and everything. So we've been pretty lazy, I would say, in regards to the time span. We've haven't been very effective this time at all. So we have good intentions of recording within perhaps half a year or so, but just difficult with work and family on the side. So. But yeah, finally we're here.
Yeah. Well, being that, you worked on this for like the past 3 years, is what we're hearing on the album like exactly like how it was originally made, or was there a lot of changes that occurred in between then and now?
Well, not a lot of changes to the songs. I think more or less the structure is exactly how it was when we recorded the drums. But this time we thought about trying to be more careful about how much material we make beforehand. We had like the rough structure on the guitars and drums and bass, but everything else, like the small details, we try to just keep for later, because usually we just go over the top and it's overkill. But this time I think we've had a bit more self-constraint. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I thought that this record was fairly experimental. Like, I thought a song like Itching Soul was very different from a song like Queen Fatigue, which is very different from a song like Darling Demon or anything like that. It's fair to say you guys like to try new things and always experiment with your sound, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think every song actually sort of stands for itself, by itself. But all together, they make a nice cocktail. I think we discussed it before. We decided to release the material as one album. We were discussing, should we instead make 2 EPs, try to divide up the songs in different genres. But then when the more we worked on the material, it all sort of blended together, we thought. So I think it works in a way, yeah.
Yeah. Was there kind of like a preconceived idea of what you wanted this album to sound like, or did the sound of Mantric just kind of come out of nowhere and come more naturally?
I think both things, actually, because you never know which direction you'll go. And some of the... there was actually one song, for instance, that suddenly took a whole different course. We actually changed a lot of the guitars, so suddenly that was a totally different song. But for the most part, we stuck to the sketches that we made before recording, and
Yeah. Do you consider this just like being that, this is technically like the third album, do you consider this just like a follow-up, like a continuation of what we heard on Descent and Sin, or did you think that False Negative is kind of like a standout more in the Mantric catalog?
Yeah, I would say it stands out in one way. I think all the albums are different. I'd say maybe this one reminds me. Some of the songs reminds me more of the first album, and our previous album, Sin. None of us really were comfortable with after releasing it. It's sort of the sound didn't. We didn't like the mix or the sound, how it sounded when we were finally finished. So we feel more comfortable with this one, and also we I forgot to say, we on this album we tried to restrain ourselves, like that the structure of the songs were more forward, like 4/4 beats, and not do too much. But again, it's difficult to not add layers and experiment. So yeah, I guess that's just how we work.
Yeah, because I remember when the single "The Towering Mountain" came out, and like I was even saying, like, this band, when they release a single, it doesn't represent like what the sound is going to be like. Like it's fair to say, like when "The Towering Mountain," if people have just heard that so far, that doesn't represent the whole album, right?
No, yeah, that's true. It doesn't. It's one of the harder songs, and then it has a lot of twists and turns, and yeah, it's heavy metal. It's trashy, and suddenly it's more atmospheric. So it's a good mix and a good blend. So you're totally right. It stands out on itself, but I guess all of the songs do that in a way.
Yeah, being that that was maybe the initial intention of Metric was to combine elements of what we heard in Langsel and Extol, and maybe like combine them into one project, or did you guys kind of want to do something completely different that you've never done before?
Well, Mantric became a band because we all we were in Extol at the time, it's actually almost 15 years ago, and then the singer he didn't want to continue, and so the Extol was like on hold. So we wanted to continue, the three of us, because we've been playing together in Lengsel. So we just started playing together again and recording and releasing an album. So I don't think it was like an intention to mix it all together. I think we've been also influenced by the time we've lived in, like with Lengsel, which is like 25 years ago. We were really influenced by the extreme metal genre and like black metal, and we wanted to sound like that, and that was like the ultimate thing. And then during the 2000, we were playing a bit more like death metal, and then suddenly we were very influenced by hardcore and rock and roll, and we had a band called Ganglion, and then suddenly we played more metal again. So I don't just think it hasn't been an intention really, and now we don't listen to much metal at all, but it's like it's fun playing and making, and just coming together and playing like in the old days. So yeah, it just feels good.
Yeah. Is it a different mind frame depending of creativity depending on the project that you're working with, or is there kind of like a usual method behind the madness that kind of like applies to everything?
I think it's changed in a way. I guess now for this album, actually the two previous albums also, the two guitarists have made all the material, like the structures, and then I've added bass guitar and lyrics. And for me it's because we haven't been playing that much live either, so it feels like maybe not the band isn't my whole identity anymore, to put it like that. But I love playing. I love being in the band and with the guys. And but I'd say the difference today is maybe that maybe we make music for different reasons. I'm not sure. I guess the two other guys did say that they can't live without making music. So, and that's great. If not, I'm not sure if we would have been a band, because music is so important.
Yeah. When you look at the entirety of the Mantra catalog, from Descent to Sin to False Negative, is it fair to say, is it almost kind of like representative of who you are at that particular time? Is it almost kind of like a self-portrait?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, in a way, except for maybe the previous album, like I said, Sin, we don't feel comfortable with that at all. So maybe the ideas, if you just look at the ideas, they are actually pretty cool, I still think. But yeah, it's not something that we're very proud of, really. But yeah, I guess all the albums, they represent us in our mind of thinking about music. I'd say. I guess if you have a musical ear, you can hear what our intention is all the time with the songs. So yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah. You ready for the most difficult question of the whole interview?
Okay.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Because you have a song like Dawn on this album that's 6.5 minutes. Starmonger is, just under 9 minutes. But then you have a song like Itching Soul that's 4 minutes. How do you know when a song is done?
I guess we never discuss how long a song should be. I can only remember one time that we did that, and it was with Extol. We tried to make like one commercial song, but that's the only time I can remember that we've ever tried to make short or long songs. It's just when we rehearse, we just jam together, and then we add parts, and in the end you have a feeling of what works, and sometimes you have to take away some parts or shorten them. And on the recording, I think there's only one song we took away just part of a riff, like 10 seconds, just because it sounded better. So we don't have we don't discuss. Maybe when we're done recording the drum tracks, we're like amazed of, this is going to be a really long song, or and usually if it's short, we applaud ourselves. That's good also.
There you go. And I have two more questions for you. But when it comes to playing your material live, is there maybe a similar energy? Do you try to capture like exactly what people are hearing on the record, or being that your music is so experimental, you try to try to maybe change things up a little bit live as well?
Yeah, no, we've always had like a rock and roll show at our shows, and again we try to focus on the playing, but usually it ends up with us just going not crazy, but we try to put on a show and add some energy. So yeah.
Okay. And the final question I wanted to ask you is actually coming from being so involved in the Norwegian scene, because obviously when people hear metal in Norway, they'll obviously think of black metal and Mayhem and all those bands. But like, I'd imagine there has to be a very prevalent scene, especially now with the legacy. Is there kind of like still a great metal scene in Norway? Not even just for black metal, but just for any type of music in general?
Yeah, I'd say the scene is good. I don't follow the metal scene that much anymore, but sure, and I think it has made things easier also. There was a time, like in the 90s, that the saying was that metal was the greatest musical export from Norway, but today it's more pop music, stuff like that. But you have this band called Kvelertak. They are pretty big. So I think it's maybe easier for bands to start playing and getting out there, and yeah. And I think people are more tolerant also when it comes to hard music these days. So I think it's maybe easier to, if you do your thing and you make a good album, you can be noticed. Yeah.
Definitely. And so before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote for Mantric? Obviously, playing live is clearly not in the question, is not, happening at the moment. But obviously when all this is over, we could be expecting to see Mantric on the road quite a bit. Will you ever bring Mantric to the States one day?
If we have the opportunity, we would love to play in the States for sure. That's like my I have two boy dreams, I guess, left in my life. One of them is like touring the States again, and the other one is going to Canada and going through the woods on a canoe tour and maybe meeting on a bear or something. So yeah, we would definitely we would love to play the States if we have the opportunity. Yeah,
definitely. But thank you so much, John. Everybody, we are here with John of Mantric. False Negative is out now. Be sure to pick that up. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.